nailed it, just like we do every week here on the Rec Poker Podcast. This is the Forums edition, which means that I'm your host, Jim Reed, Bluffsterini in the home game. And you can learn about me and the rest of the Wrecking Crew here by going to rec.poker/crew. We are a community. It takes a village to put all this great stuff together. So I got to thank our friends at the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. And of course, the one and only website, Mark Prashon, and website AMP. So every week here on the Rec Poker Forums edition, we are going to take a post from the forums and we talk about it here on the show. But it's not just me. I'm here with a panel of recreational wizards. Panel, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself?
I'm Chris Jones. You can find me 5B5 on Twitter and 5x5 everywhere else.
I'm John Somsky, and I'm Poker Geek MN everywhere.
I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Radman50 everywhere.
I'm Taylor Moss. You can find me on Twitter at Taylor_Moss or in the Rec Poker home game as Gopherboy TJM.
You sure can, and you can find out about everybody here and more wonderful people just like them by going to rec.poker/crew and checking out everybody on the Wrecking Crew and what they're doing to shine their light on the recreational poker world. So, it's Monday night as we're recording this, so you know we are playing in the home game, trying to steal each other's chips. You know we are going to steal a forum post from the Rec Poker forums that you can join for free. If you have an email address and a smile, go to rec.poker and sign up for a community account and go post a forum post of yourself, of your own. And if you're a premium member, like my buddy Stu, who's in the chat here tonight, you're welcome to come and join our conversation every week when we record these episodes. And if you have a post in the forum that you're interested in talking about as a premium member, just submit it here in the session. Come on up on the panel and talk about it here with the crew. This week, we are looking at a post by ImaLouigi, who has posted on our forums before. He's also a fun follow on Twitter. I'm not sure we have his full name in our public database, so I don't want to out him. But look up ImaLouigi and follow along. You'll have some fun there. This post is called Exposed Card plus a Tell plus a Redeal at WPT Venetian. So this is a weird hand from the 5K WPT Venetian back in July. No, and I'm just going to read out what ImaLouigi is saying here to give everyone the context. Although I do encourage everyone, go check out the actual forum posts for real. We talk about it on the air, but for most of these posts, you can get a lot more detail by going and checking out the forum post itself. It's a great way to share information and learn together. So no known pros at my table, he says, but it was a tough draw with all but one opponent playing solid aggressive poker. The main villain is an early 30s Asian player who has grown his chip stack since the start of play without having to show down very often. Villain is playing solid aggressive poker without appearing to be getting too out of line. Hero is effective stack with 30K starting stack and has been active early but not significantly higher than an average VPIP. So the blinds are 100, 200 with a 200 ante. The middle position opens 3x to 600. The cutoff 3 bets to 1600, and that's the main villain. Hero calls in the small blind with King of Hearts and Jack of Hearts, and we get a call from middle position. So maybe we should just, it's not really what we're talking about in the hand, but we always like talking about strategy hands here. We get a 3x from the cutoff. We get a 3x from middle position. We get an active player 3-betting from the cutoff. We've got King of Hearts, Jack of Hearts in the small blind. It's 8 big blinds to call. Well, seven more big blinds to call. What do we like in this spot? 30 big blinds effective. It's ours.
Well, we're and so we're all really deep. We're 150 big blinds effective.
Oh, sorry, 30,000. Yeah, sorry, 30,000.
So, and I think that makes a very big difference to how we think about this spot. This is a marginal spot. The cold call from the small blind to 3-bet, I think, is something you've got to like kind of really be thinking about. You know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and something you probably shouldn't have it shouldn't be a steady practice. It should be something you're doing infrequently. But this might be a spot where we can, although I don't know if I love this hand as one of the ones that I would pick to do it with. It's the kind of hand that can get us into some trouble post flop. We're going to be out of position. We have all those reverse implied odds that can happen when a jack or a king hit. But we're deep enough. If we hit a monster flush or we hit, a straight with our king jack, and those are probably going to hit our opponents as well. Maybe we can get some massive amounts of chips. So it's one that you got to be careful with, but I can see the case because we're deep enough to do it. What others think?
Yeah, I could see a fold for sure, because it is one of those reverse dominated hands a lot. And when you do get a good monster flop, it's usually pretty obvious to the table that there's something scary out there. But I mean, it does make high flushes. It does make the nut straight. It's got a lot of playability. I don't think I'd be 4-betting it. So I don't think this is a good candidate for a cold 4-bet at this stack depth. And so I think the question is really between calling and folding. I think I'd want to know more than I do to call, I think, in this spot.
You mean about the opponents?
Yeah. Because you're not even closing the action either. Yeah, John.
I think I pretty much agree with that. I tend to go by, if you were to never call from the small blind, it would not be a very big mistake, because if you always just folded or raised appropriately, you're not losing much by calling there. In this exact situation, I could see myself calling with King Jack of Hearts, but I would also afterwards probably think to myself, I probably should have just folded.
All right. Well, I think we got a few thoughts on that, but the interesting part of the hand comes a little later. So we do call, and we get the call from middle position, and the flop comes Jack of spades, 7 of spades, 4 of spades. So monotone flop, not the right tone, but we do have top pair, second kicker, and no real redraw. It checks around. And I think that'll happen a lot, although I'm a little surprised we don't get a c-bet from the in-position raiser pre-flop. This is the kind of flop where they get to exert a lot of pressure. Most of the other players' ranges have to fold. And even though it's more likely that someone's got a couple spades because we're multi-way and the action went call, at this, we're so deep, as Chris points out earlier, that I don't mind taking a stab on the flop here. So that's a little weird. So we can think about what that does to the villain's range when they don't c-bet the monotone flop here. The turn comes the 8 of clubs. So the board is now Jack of spades, 7 of spades, 4 of spades, 8 of clubs. So a straight does come on the board. And the hero leads 1,700 into a pot of 5,200. It's a good board for us. And the other players have really weakened the range by not betting on the flop. What do people think about the lead here on the turn? I do think call flop lead turn is a line that more recreational players should take. Is this a good candidate for it in people's minds?
It's not terrible. I mean, with the monotone board out there, or 3 to a flush, you can get some of the single cards of those suit to come along. So, I mean, you can get paid off by hands that are drawing thin, but like when they hit, they know that they have won. So it's kind of easy for you to play as well. But at the same time, it's still a pretty scary board. We've got, top pair, not top kicker. What does our opponent's range look like, and how does it interact with this? I know it kind of weakens when they check the flop, but it's also pretty scary that our opponent could check a high portion of their range too. They could check ace jack, no, what is the suit? A spade, heart, whatever it is. That's very reasonable to check in that spot. So I don't know exactly where we're at here. This feels like a lead to just kind of like find out where we're at. And I'm not always a huge fan of that. But I also don't think it's like that terrible in this spot either, because you can get those single high card types of hands to come with. So I don't know. I probably just check call here as well, but I don't think this is terrible.
And
well, because the flop checked through, I think it's a good time to lead with your top pair second kicker. Typically, if somebody, especially the pre-flop aggressors, well, they're both pre-flop aggressors, right? We were the only one that wasn't. Neither one of the pre-flop aggressors chose to take a stab at this spot. Now, middle position probably wasn't going to do it anyway because he was going to wait for the three better. But the fact that the three better didn't do it kind of leaves it wide open and says, okay, let's get out there. We've got top pair. We've got second kicker. Nobody seemed to be interested in the flush. Let's see if we can get some value, like Taylor said, from them, the single spades that might be out there. Somebody with an ace of spades or a king of spades is going to call. Chances are, somebody could be sitting out there with eights, nines, tens. Well, eight wouldn't be eights because eight was on the turn, right?
Right.
But somebody could be out there with one of those 9, 10 type hands, maybe even sixes. So those are hands that you could get some value from at this point in the game. And a turn, really, I say this a lot, is a place where people still have hope. We haven't got to the river yet, so people are going to call you more often on the turn than they are on the river.
That's right. Yeah, and we got to make them pay for that hope. We got to make them pay.
Right.
I do think that there's an element of that. We're not getting anywhere near the point of this post, which is so typical for us. But
right.
There is an element of that sort of, if you are going to get value from all those hands, the only time to do it is before the river, because they're simply not going to put chips in when the draw doesn't come in, whether it's a spade draw or a straight draw here. So if it's worth getting value from that part of the range, it has to happen on the turn. And then the question is it worth it when the rest of the range is stuff that crushes you in the long run? So that's one good question. Chris?
The other question, I'm just thinking about this, and it might absolutely, but like, this feels like a board that, as the big blind after a check around, this feels like a board where we may want to, if we do lead larger.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
To you? Like, I'm thinking about, like, I would like, this is about a third pot bet. I'd like to make it a little bit, almost like a 60% pot bet, kind of like a pretty big one, especially because we're so deep. And I want to do this also with, even if I flop a flush too. Like, I want to, I don't know. What do you think of that?
I like that.
Yeah, me too. With the entire range that we're choosing to make this action, do it with a larger bet sizing. I think that makes sense, because we're representing a range of very strong draws and very strong hands, because Jack King is probably near the bottom of our actual betting range here, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's really.
And the fact that we were in the small blind, we're going to check 100% of the time.
Yeah.
On the flop, no matter what we have.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden now everybody checked, so now we have an opportunity to actually get out there. So another thing about a larger bet like that, it makes a raise that much more significant to the other players. So if someone felt like they wanted to raise you with their ace of spades, well, now it's going to cost them that much more, and it might deter them from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And especially because the action that we're taking, like, we can't disguise the strength of our action by doing it with a smaller bet size. We just shouldn't be taking a betting line here with the kind of hands that aren't strong enough to use a bigger bet size, I think. So I think that's interesting. I want to go down one more little rabbit hole that Rob just brought up before we actually get to the part of the hand that's interesting to our original poster. we always talk about how the out of position player is going to check 100% of their range, right? And so that they haven't really weakened their range by checking because they're going to do that all the time, that they never have a donking range there. Why is checking in the dark such a fishy thing to do then? I know this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but why isn't it effectively what you're doing anyway, but you also get to now project this like fishy image? I'm seriously considering going down to WSOP and just checking in the dark for the entire time that I'm down there, because I'm going to be checking almost all the time anyway. Why not make them think that I'm like this really fishy player? Seriously. John, you're the only one who's not muted right now.
Is there ever a situation where you wouldn't want to do that?
I mean, maybe with some holdings.
Okay, so if you're going to do that with some holdings,
right,
then you can never do it.
So
right?
then
you either, if you're going to do that 100% of the time, check in the dark till the cows come home. But if you have hands or things that you don't do that with, then you're basically advertising, I want to keep my options open this very rare time.
So then do you get enough from having the donk in your range to make up for that? Or is it like, do you know what I mean? Or can you
yeah. So the thing is that what you're doing there is only going to fool people for like 20 minutes. After that, most people, they will realize that they're actually a decent player and they just have this one weird quirk. Or in your case, it will confirm that, yes, you don't know what the heck you're doing. And it'll play into that. So I think you're telegraphing your actual play in this particular case.
Wise.
And for other people, it's not going to be a ruse that is left very long.
All right. Well, everybody that's enjoying this, Rob, you guys have to say.
I know what you're saying, Jim, because I see people doing this, at the live tables at the small stake tournaments that I play. Check in the dark. Yeah. It's like, okay, big deal. I mean, what, who cares? It's like they're trying to get reactions out of people at the table or make it seem like they're really weak when in actuality they actually have a hand. And they don't do it every single time. So, they're going to check 100% of the time. But when they say, I'm going to check in the dark, 9 out of 10 times, they have a real hand.
Oh, all right. Interesting.
So it's for those of you paying attention, pay attention to those people that say, I check in the dark. And 9 times out of 10, they're not going to have junk.
I'm heading out this Friday, well before this podcast actually airs, but I'm going to go play some cash at the Playground Casino. And I think just for fun, I'm going to check in the dark for the entire time that I'm there, and I want to see how people respond to that. And maybe I won't wear any Rec Poker gear or anything, so I won't, demean the brand. But I'll just go there with my Steelers hat and be one of them yinzers checking in the dark. Okay, interesting. I wonder if Jonathan Little has anything to say about that. Let's let him out of the closet and see what he says.
Have you ever wondered whether you should call a preflop raise or 3-bet instead? What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it or do you just call? What do you do with ace-king when you miss the flop? Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at PokerCoaching.com/recpoker right now.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you so much. But now back in the dungeon, Jonathan. All right, there he goes. He's very accommodating. Yes, I think that might be the first time we've actually run the Jonathan Little ad before we get to the point of the post. Well done, everybody. I'll take some major credit for that last rabbit hole. All right, so meanwhile, back in the world of ImaLouigi, who posted the actual hand that we're talking about here, just bring you back up to speed. We're deep stacked. We've got top pair, second kicker. The board is Jack of spades, 7 of spades, 4 of spades, 8 rainbow. We lead. The villain calls in the cutoff after middle position folds. Now, I'm not sure exactly how this happens, but the next thing that happens is that a 9 gets exposed as though it was the river. and we get a reaction from the villain. So a 9 gets exposed. They realize there's an error. They re-deal the river, and this time it's an 8. So the board would have been Jack 7, 4, 8, 9, but instead it's Jack 7, 4, 8, 8. The villain lets out an audible sigh and looks annoyed. It seems authentic and just his natural reaction to the situation. That's when the 9 gets reshuffled in. So it feels like ImaLouigi is saying that he liked that 9. Is that the way that you guys are reading this as well? When he realizes the 9 has to get shuffled back into the deck, it's like the 9 helped him and he's annoyed that it doesn't get to stick around?
That's what he's implying. But at the same time, if for this to happen, that means the villain hadn't quite called yet. So he might just be annoyed that the dealer didn't let him complete his action. You know, as opposed to just being mad that it was a 9 that had to be shuffled back in.
That's true. The rank of the card isn't the only thing that he could be reacting to. That's
right. Based on the chain of events here, the only way that could have happened is if the villain hadn't called yet when the dealer performed that action.
The only thing you have to watch out for here is if the villain was aware of that he was being watched. If he was cognizant of that, then this could be acting. In general, if you're looking for tells, if a player is doing something and you don't think they were aware that they were being watched, then whatever they were doing is probably straightforward and indicative of what's really going on. With this, I'd have to be pretty sure that they didn't do that. You'd have to know a little bit more about the player. Are they the type of player who does that type of thing? I would never make that gasp myself.
Right.
I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't do anything. And so if I was, it would probably be a reverse tell, if anything. So I'd be a little bit worried about that. And I'd have to be in the situation to see if I trusted that read. I mean, and from what ImaLouigi said, in his opinion, that is a trustworthy read.
Yep.
Yeah, because you can act all you want, but those like surprise reactions, you can't script those. Like that is the one true thing. So like if it was just all of a sudden boom, like it's really hard to like actively act and make that like I'm upset on something that just happened. Like if you're trying to pretend something, like I think it was like a Sherlock Holmes movie where it was like, you want to find out the person who's pretending to be someone else, have some big surprise that happens in the room, and he's going to keep pretending while everyone else makes some sort of different reaction. And it kind of fits like that same concept. You can't put a surprise out there and just have someone instantly react to it. So it does make it, at least to me, feel plausible that he is upset about this 9 coming out.
Right on. So as it's played, the final board is Jack 7, 4, 8, 8, and we check, and the villain bets 5,000 into a pot of 8,600. So roughly, I don't know, about 2/3 or so, and it's on us. It's on us now. So how are we analyzing their play, the information available to us? What's the little voice in the back of our head telling us to do here, and what should we be listening to?
Well, so from I think there's two things, right? Like, what would we do if there wasn't all this, rigmarole, the 9 and the 8 coming and whatever? And I think for me, like, I don't know if everyone else agrees, but this is just sort of a pretty easy call. Like, I think we've got there are a number of bluffs that are still out there. It's not that big of a bet. It's not that big of much of our stack. I think there's a lot of hands that we still beat at this point. So I'm probably calling this. It's not I'm probably losing a decent amount of the time, but it's not that big. And I think it's pretty. I think folding is the next best option. I think it's pretty suicidal to raise this. But then, given the action here, if we really believe that tell, and this is where you have to really tells you should only use when, but if we really believe this tell, I think we have to raise this. Like, I don't see how we're behind at this point.
Well, there is one hand that makes sense with that exact action, and that'd be 8-10.
Yeah.
Right? Because now they've got a trip eights. Instead, they would have had the straight.
Because the reaction happened between the 9 getting reshuffled and the 8 coming back up. So we don't know that he's upset that an 8's there. We just know that he also liked 9, essentially. Yeah.
Naked tens.
Yeah, naked tens.
Mm-hmm. I think there's 3 hands: 8-10, 8-9, and 10-10.
Yep.
I think pocket 9s too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then which of those, and then what is he value betting and what is he bluffing with when he bets 2/3 or so into us on the river here with those combos in mind? I doubt he's doing that with pocket 10s. Oh, well, except.
Why not?
Well, what's his
now?
Yeah,
well,
but what's his value target?
It's not necessarily a value target. He's probably just betting because he feels that we were on a flush draw, and that's why we bet out. Because we never showed any strength at all in this pot, and now we checked on the river when the board paired.
So this could also, if the reaction was genuine, this could easily be entitlement tilt. I hit my gin card, and now they're taking it away from me. Well, by golly, I've earned this pot. I deserve it. Therefore, I am going to make you fold. So it's conceivable that they could do this with just, a naked 10, ace 10 even. Not for value, but just because they want to win the pot that they already think of as their own.
Mm.
I also think it's crazy that Chris thinks we should raise this
with the tell.
But even with the tell, don't we still just have like a bluff catcher? Wouldn't we rather just catch the bluff? What are we getting him to fold that we beat, or that beats us? Or inversely, what is he going to call with that?
I think we can maybe still get called by pocket 10s and pocket 9s.
Maybe worse jack.
So that is why I would raise, but this is a purely exploitive live tell. If I really trust this read, I'm targeting pocket 10s and pocket 9s, and I am raising really small.
And it's because you have essentially lopped off the top of his range at this point, right? Like that.
Correct.
Yes. So there's just not as many combos.
I'm reading this tell as saying the 9 was important to me.
Yes.
So that if I really believe that, then those are the hands because I think we're gonna lose. Like Queen 10's gonna fold to our raise. All the other ones where a 9 was really helpful are gonna fold, but I don't know. I could be crazy.
Feels crazy to me. Yeah. I would just call. Like if you have that read, like to me, I'm just gonna call there, take my small win. It's still a decent sized win.
Yep.
And move on. Just getting myself into trouble where he's got 8-9 and both of these river cards just helped him.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I mean, I think you're probably right. I think when I see this kind of thing, it's like, how much do I actually act on it, and how much do I just play the solid poker that I would have played if none of this ever happened? Because I would never raise this ever in any universe without this action.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting part of it, because what the action, if we take the action at its word, if we believe that it's genuine, then I think it does remove a lot of the value hands that we're worried about making this bet. So it certainly makes me feel like we should be calling more comfortably. And then the real question is, of those remaining combos, how many are going to respond to the raise versus because again, if we're going to get called by some of the hands that we beat, and there's just not that many hands that beat us, and they're going to fold all the rest anyway, then it doesn't that math might be closer than we're kind of giving it credit for, because we've already won against all the hands that are going to fold. So we don't even really have to factor them in at this point. And if we have eliminated enough of those value hands, that 10s and 9s exactly are going to be enough when he does call, then it's a math problem. I like that approach.
I still think that his reaction may not necessarily have been because it was a 9, but just because the dealer acted out of turn.
Yep.
And you know how people get frustrated with dealers? I don't know if you've ever noticed it at the poker table, but there's a lot of idiots out there that get really frustrated with dealers. They're supposed to be perfect, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't know. It could have. There's a couple of ways that he could have reacted, or reasons why he reacted the way he did.
Yeah, so I think I'm with Chris. I definitely call there. I feel much more confident about having a top pair hand, but I think he is going to have some of those other combos sometimes, and yeah, I don't know.
Wait, if you're with Chris, you're raising.
I think you're with Taylor.
Oh, you said I don't know if I want to be on the record in that case.
No, I'm definitely with Taylor.
Say the words.
Taylor was right.
I'm with Taylor. I call.
Yeah, no, I do feel like I'd have to. I don't like to do live math on the show. We don't do any live math on the air. But I do wonder how many of those. I'd like to do some combo counting when I have more time and see. Because I do think there is a value target there, but it's just really, really small. So we'd have to see, have we eliminated enough of that other part of the range to make that small value target worth it or not? That would be an interesting question.
I think if you look right now, Taylor's head actually is bigger than the door behind him. So, yeah.
That's right. I guess I was forced to share his perspective. There we go.
Yeah.
Forced perspective action on us here. Nice. All right, gang. Well, when we're all agreeing with Taylor, it's time to pack it in. It's been another fun week on the Rec Poker Podcast Forums edition. I'd like to thank ImaLouigi for putting that fun question out there. And Chris, Rob, Taylor, and John, of course, Website Amp and Running Aces, Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino.